Hello and welcome to the Christian Fantasy and Sci-Fi Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything fantasy and science fiction. Your host is Matt Crosswhite, and the subject matter expert is Josiah Marshall. And here we go.
Hello and welcome back to Christian Fantasy and Sci-Fi Podcast. Glad to have you with us again today. Fortunately, Matt couldn't make it, but that doesn't mean we still can't talk story. So specifically today, let's talk how to write a story, or how to write in general. Or another way to phrase that question would be how to be creative. There are many methods out there that can help people be creative. And there are a lot of professionals and experts that have offered their own insights as to what's helped them and how they've done it. But if there's really two things I want to start with looking at right now. And that's your brain. In your brain, you have your right hemisphere and you have your left hemisphere. Your right hemisphere tends to contain your imagination and your creativity. Your left hemisphere tends to create more of your cognitive side, your mathematics, your language, and so forth. And so, while we could ask the existential question of where does story come from, what I am going to say is that both these hemispheres play a part in us being able to write stories. So, where is a place to start? For me, it's the imagination. But here's a problem. What happens when my left hemisphere, when my language and my mathematics and my cognitive reasoning gets in the way of my imagination? I tend to call that my egos. Not to say that I'm egotistical or anything, but it's just the person that is me. What does Descartes say? I think, therefore I am. So it's that part of your brain that I am trying to set aside in order to enable my imagination to produce what it wants to produce. Now that asks the immediate question, does that mean that I do it without thinking? Not necessarily, okay? So one of the ways to understand why I would be allowing my egos to take a time out so that my imagination can do what it does is for me to describe how I see these two things. One way to phrase it is the left brain is active and the right brain is passive. Another way I like to frame it is left brain is what's actively running in the forefront. Me being able to think, function, executive function, and so on, and reason and respond, if not react to things. Whereas the right brain is still on, but it's in the background of sorts. It provides, let's say, a tape recorder of things that are going on, taking life in 3D. But because I'm saying that even though it may be passive, doesn't mean it's not taking things in. But what is it doing in the meantime? That's where connections start being made metaphorically, allegorically, even symbolically with things that we see around us and things that we go through. Because while it can be events that we can write about or serve as an inspiration for a story, what we see has a great deal of influence about what we want to write, I think. Now, does that mean persons such as Helen Keller didn't have the ability to write, and so where in the world did she get her ability to write? She still had a way of seeing things as words became as she woke up to the ability to be able to see words and what they do. So we're not going to get into so much analytics of Helen Keller, although that is a very interesting topic. But let's continue with this. That for me, when I start writing a story, I let it out. I let my imagination just run wild. You take center stage. You present what you've seen, how you've seen it. And then later on, I'm going to come in with the left brain, the director, so to speak. And I'm going to allow it to be more reasonable, saying, okay, well, this was good here, but let's move it over here. okay, this was good dialogue here, but maybe we could trim that dialogue. Maybe there was too much. And then, oh, you know what? What better way? Let's put this as the starting point and this is the end point. Let's create this narrative arc there. That was an intriguing insight into that character. Let's let that be something that they grow into or grow out of. So that's how I tend to see how story plays out for me in my process in producing stories. But there's still that hang up. What if I'm not as right-brained as I want to be? Well, that's where checklists can come in. And reading various authors' ways of how to organize yourself intellectually and through logic and reason in order to produce something that you want to be creative with. There are various books out there, and right now, the sources and resources on the internet is just over stinking whelming. And I mean, it's amazing the mountain, the ocean of resources available out there. But there are 3 books specifically that I have found to be incredibly useful. One is Creative Authenticity by Ian Roberts. And he's not necessarily going directly into writing as he is just creating authentically. Instead of reproducing something that somebody else did, finding your own voice, finding your own way of doing it, and being able to do it and then see it to resolve. Kit Reed wrote a book called Mastering Fiction Writing. And I've really appreciated that book because it helps me be more organizational as to what I'm wanting to produce, how I'm wanting to produce it, and where I want it to go. One of the things that I've really tried to be mindful of when I'm telling a story is not to turn it into propaganda. Because when you turn a story into propaganda is when you're making a specific point. I'm wanting this to go a specific place I want it to go, not so much where the story wants to go. That's my distinction there. And so Kit Reed has helped me be able to really parse out what I'm trying to do and where I'm allowing story to be story and where I'm wanting me to be me in that process. And then another book is Steering the Craft by Ursula K. Le Guin. This book brings it into a practicality. She brought it down to her desk. Now, there are many other professionals that have written books. This is the one I've tended to gravitate towards because her desk and my desk and how we see story and what we do with story is kind of similar. And so as a result, that's why I've got her book and that's why I've used her book and would recommend her book to other people who would find similarities between themselves and Ursula K. Le Guin because she offers a certain practicality, a certain environmental setting, a certain mind space in order to be able to produce something that, in other words, being able to either couch your imagination or couch your reasoning and able to enable the other one to be able to produce something that you're wanting to produce. So those are some 3 books that I would definitely recommend. But here's something else I'd recommend is you asking yourself a few questions. What am I wanting to do here? Who's it for? Why am I writing it? Now, these don't have to be existential questions and they don't have to carry a lot of nuance, but they can be very grounded questions. Because let's face it, when you're walking through an airport and you walk into a bookstore and you're expecting to find certain authors, okay, they're there. Great. Are they the most creative? Are they the most developed? Maybe, maybe not. But they've become sort of the quintessential storyteller that you go, anything I pick up with them is going to be decent. It's not probably going to be thoroughly in depth, but you know what? They're going to produce something that's worth me spending my time on. But when you get into these authors who want to go even farther, say Patrick Rothfuss and his book In the Name of the Wind, I remember reading and listening to him talk about his process and at least being able to say, I wanted to take it seriously. And I wanted to be able to be creative, but at the same time, not be so casual or flippant with it. I wanted to take it seriously. But then you've got the likes of J.R.R. Martin. He takes it so seriously that while there's the imagination side, he's more left brain than right. Does that make sense? And so as a result, there's different spectrums that you can go on. Okay, I want more left brain than right. Okay, I want a blend of both, or I want more right than left. And so when you're looking to do your own storytelling, not only be able to understand how you operate, make sure you're understanding your goal or your purpose for writing. Is it for someone else? Is it for you to just make money and be a writer? There's an old quote I want to quote real quick from somebody who once said, if you wake up in the morning and you want to write, then you are a writer. So you don't have to question. It's not a matter of questioning your identity. It's a matter of you being able to question, what am I wanting to do with this? Am I wanting to do some masterpiece, some grand landscape with great detail? Or am I just wanting to create a sketch? That's going to help you determine how invested you want to be with it and how much effort and time you're going to want to spend with it. And so as a result, you're going to be producing it more for, and let me clarify something here real quick. That does not mean that what you're producing for someone else can't be for yourself. Oh, I'm just putting this out because somebody's going to want a sketch, or somebody's going to want a masterpiece. That could very well be a reason. But at the same time, you're still wanting to do something for yourself, right? Because what are you doing? You're satisfying a need or a desire. I need to write, or I want to write. And when I don't write, it feels like things just get clogged up inside of me. You ever had that feeling? And so when I come back to the left and the right brain, I come back to self. I'm writing for me. I'm writing because I want to. I'm writing because I need to. Do I want to keep other people in mind? Perhaps. But what I'm producing is something I'd rather be producing something I want or enjoy rather than producing something I have no connection to. Because when I put something together that I want or desire, there's going to be more in it. You're going to see the love and affection and the attention to detail when you read something that somebody said, no, this is going to be for me, or it's going to be for someone else to be able to read but still see that I spent a lot of time on this and I wanted to be able to put myself into this in ways that's going to make it good. Now, does that mean quantity is more than quality? No. Just because you produce a 1,000-page book doesn't always mean it's going to be quality. But that's what I'm talking about here. It can be a quantity versus quality thing when you're looking at how you're wanting to produce it and to what standards you want to produce it. Because everybody else's standards are going to be different than yours. That's why art is so subjective, right? Someone that connected to Tolkien's mind is going to go, I love this. This is a 5-star. Other people that don't are going to go, this is a 3-star because I still see that, yes, he spent time. He was more, he was very detailed. He put things together well. He had a narrative arc. Do you kind of hear the differences there? You almost hear the difference between right brain and left brain. And I'm not trying to work into absolutes here, but I'm trying to show the spectrum of ways people look at stories, both from the reader's perspective and the author's perspective. Because if we look at it from both those, even J.R.R. Tolkien had so many things to say to his good friend C.S. Lewis. And all of the things that C.S. Lewis was just pumping out, and how Tolkien thought, you know what, you need to be putting some more effort into this. Did that change the quality of C.S. Lewis's stuff? No, I don't think it did. But for Tolkien, a guy who is incredibly immersed in such a way that he's wanting to get into the language of things, into a deeper heart of things, that's what his goal was, and that's how he operated. So let's go back to the beginning. How do you operate? Are you right brain or left brain? And you being able to spend time on your art is going to result and reflect in what you produce. There was a gentleman, he was a landscape painter, Carl something. He said something along the lines of that confidence will come out through practice and long experience. That's what it was. Practice and experience. Confidence is going to come out of practice and experience. So the more you do something, the more you become comfortable with yourself, the more you become familiar with your own way of doing things, the result is going to be something that you're going to be proud of. And if you're not, that's what you call seconds. And all sorts of different art of the art field have seconds. I remember going to a potter's house and him showing me his seconds. I look at this stuff and I thought, this is brilliant stuff. This is gorgeous. I'd still display this stuff. But he would look at it and say, no, there's that little imperfection right there. And so did he put it out? No. Was he wrong for not putting out? No. It's your stuff. You decide what you gets put out, and you get to decide what you keep and put on your walls or put on your books or put on your CDs. That's for you. You don't always have to be making something for somebody else. It doesn't always have to be for money either. Some of the stories I've written, I've just put out there. I didn't have a need to make money off of it, but I have found people that, readers who have come back to me and says, hey, thanks for putting this out there. It just ended up being this little thing that I was able to read. I put a short story out one time of a flower, and I got a reader that contacted me and said, I actually laminated it and put it on my rear view mirror because it's just a story that creates a picture for me that when I look at that page, it allows me to go to that place. Isn't that fascinating? And I think it's just so fulfilling to be able to have a reader contact me and say something like that. Okay? So whatever your goals are, whatever your purposes is, whatever your narrative is, it doesn't matter. And the funny thing is that this doesn't restrict itself or contain itself specifically to writing or art. This is about the individual. It's interesting how this can go to a lot of what is going on in our society today. And now I'm not about to become a social commentator on all of this, but I will say that as you become more comfortable in your own body and in your own skin, and I'm not trying to be woke here, and I'm not trying to be anything and everything else in between. All I'm trying to say is this, is that as you come to know yourself, what you like and what you dislike, your desires, your purpose, your goals, your dreams, and you become confident in the ability to seek after them and express yourself, it's going to reflect in all areas of life, including art. Your art is going to be stronger. It's going to become, in some cases, simpler. Because sometimes the complexities that we try to put into story or art can end up confusing the producer, the writer, the reader, the musician. It can be very, very confusing for them just to even make it, and not the reader. But you get what I'm trying to say here. So as you come into this and come back to asking those basic questions such as, am I right brain or left brain? My encouragement to you is to then allow yourself to be that way. You may feel that way sometimes, especially when you get the 3 or the 5-star reviews or even the 1-star reviews. It can be gut-wrenching to have somebody say, no, this wasn't that good. But when you've decided that this is what I'm going to produce and this is how I'm going to produce it, let that be it. And be comfortable and confident with what you want to do. Which is why I've always said and will continue to say, be the geek, be the nerd, be the writer, be the painter that only you can be. Because no one else can do what you do. No one else can see the world that you see. And your unique perspective can offer someone else encouragement, a place to go, a place to immerse themselves in, and a place to enjoy. Doesn't always have to be something so complex or grandiose. But when we get to sit down and watch a story, read a story, hear a story, and be able to enjoy it, I think that can be a very achievable and fulfilling goal. Until next time, continue to be the nerd, continue to be the geek, continue to be the writer, the musician, the thinker only you can be. And until next time, take care.